Welcome to the Amplify Your Voice TV show with Megan Brainerd. On this show, we empower and we encourage. We also speak to emerging authors, marketplace leaders, and kingdom influencers. So today we have the beautiful Michelle Farrar, who has a heart for the hurting and is passionate about people rebounding from trauma and tragedy, as well as training and equipping in prayer, ministry, and leadership development.
I'm a minister, I'm an ordained prophet, and I go to Kingdom Culture in San Bernardino. And my story, where does it start from? Wow, it sure didn't start on a path of salvation. Me, myself, became a teen parent at 15 and had I had 5 children by the time I was 22. Was in an extremely abusive relationship, but it was at the end of that relationship that actually led me to accepting Christ into my life. And so after that, once I got saved, things just started moving quickly, and God just really started putting me on this journey of knowing who He is and hearing His voice and bringing me into a greater knowledge of Him and just having passion for people who came out of situations like mine.
I think there's a lot of similarities even in our stories and also in our calling. What I want to ask you is, what is your definition of a kingdom leader?
A kingdom leader to me is one that brings the kingdom into every space that they go. Whether you're called to lead in the marketplace or whether you're called to lead in your own home. If you have a leadership role, you will bring the word of God and what God says and His light into every aspect of the places that you are called to lead.
And the reason why I'm asking you that is because I even spoke to someone earlier on, and we spoke about kingdom being used in the marketplace, but you don't see the fruit. So, can you speak to that just about your experience and your journey with being an entrepreneur when you have seen your peers or leaders trying to be carbon copies of someone else? How have you responded to that, and how has that even helped you to show up authentically as a marketplace leader?
I've seen it happen, and what it does is I feel like it just compromises the witness of who God is. He tells us to go into all the world, and so we are supposed to go. So it's very important to be authentic and to be yourself because you bring up a piece. Even if you're doing the same thing someone else is doing, there's a piece that you bring, and there's something attached to your voice that only you can unlock for others. So it's very important to be your authentic self. So what brought me to write the book is I've had prophetic words over my life that I would be an author. They kept continue to come. And last year I went on a missions trip to Africa. I was in Uganda and I was in Zambia. And before I left, the words were continue to come. It's time for you to write a book. Time for you to write a book. So we went to the missions trip and it was amazing. And during that time, I kept a journal. I just was really tracking everything God was doing because I wanted to remember the experience. And after I came back from the trip, I was just having a really hard time processing everything that happened. And so as I sat down with God and was like, I really need you to help me because it was such an amazing trip, but we were very just really hands on ministering. And then to come back, trying to process all that happened, I said, I need you to help me process this trip. And then as I began to write it, the Lord started to say, this not only was highlighted to you during the trip, this has been a highlight to you throughout your entire process as a leader. I thought I was writing letters. I first entitled it Letters from Africa. And it was just, just me as processing the book. But as I continued to go and continue to develop it and sharing it with a few friends, it was shown that no, this is actually a leadership model. And so I just wrote into that and got it done, listening, being obedient to the fact that I was supposed to write, and it was time for me to write now.
So you mentioned that you needed to make sure that you were obedient, that you were supposed to write. So for those that are struggling, those emerging authors that are struggling to write, Can you speak to that place of procrastination, that place of you thinking that your story isn't significant?
Like I said, I've had prophetic word for years that I was supposed to write, and I kept putting it off, different reasons. And as I said, I had a prophetic word going into last year, and it was like, it's time for you to write. And the words kept coming, and they continued to get more and more urgent. And then it actually, the more people would come to me, it was like, you need to write now or the window is going to close. The grace for you is going to close. And I mean, that just really, stunted me into action because I could feel the weight of it. And it just continued to come, a lot. And sitting with a friend, she spoke to me and she said, you have 90 days to get this book out. And it just sparked action into me. And to realize, in that, if you don't move, like I said earlier, there's something in you that somebody in the earth needs that only you can unlock. So when you don't bring forth your voice, there's something that they're not getting. There's something that people cannot tap into. There's a next level that they can't move into. And either God will send somebody else or he has to raise someone else up. And now not only are you delayed, but they're delayed. And so your sound and what you have is so important because we're all pieces for one another.